with that down, let's move on to main topic number 2, shall we? And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Nick Vander Ploeg. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not going to pretend that I do. And Nick writes, I don't know if you saw, but apparently the Oscars is implementing a new quota on diversity in movies it nominates. I'm all for diversity, but it seems like this will eliminate a lot of films that may not be able to meet the quotas just based on their subject matter alone. What are your thoughts? All right, thanks a lot for writing that in, man. And yes, this actually came out a couple of days ago. For those of you who may not be familiar with this, a couple of days ago, the Oscars announced that they were implementing, as they talked about like 6 months ago, they were talking about looking at doing this. But a couple of days ago, they announced that by 2024, I think they've announced that by 2024, they are implementing these new rules, these new criteria for studios and movies that says, if you want your movie to be able to qualify to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, your film has to meet certain criteria. Now, it should be noted that these are rules that are extremely similar to the rules that BAFTA implemented some time ago. That's the British equivalent of the Academy Awards. BAFTA implemented similar rules to this quite some time ago. They've had no issue. I didn't make this a topic on the John Campea Show because to me, it looked really benign. What I have been shocked to see over the past little while, the past couple of days, is the amount of emails that have been coming in and the amount of things I've been seeing popping up on various outlets, basically saying, forget 1917. 1917 never would have got nominated for an Academy Award if these rules had been in place. Actually, it would have been, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Well, you can forget that The Irishman would have been considered. The Irishman, whatever would have been considered, it wouldn't have met. Actually, The Irishman would have still been nominated because The Irishman actually met the qualifications. I have been stunned to see how many people are getting upset by this new criterion, these new rules. And the more I listened to the people complaining about them, I realized I think most of these people, certainly not all, but I think most of these people haven't even read what the rules are and actually don't understand what this criteria is and how it's going to be applied. Listen, before we get into the rules and criteria, let me make something perfectly clear that is beyond refute and not up for debate. For over a century in Hollywood, to differing degrees depending on the decades you're talking about, but for over a century in Hollywood, there has been a very active, very aggressive agenda of exclusion in Hollywood. To varying degrees, depending on which decade you're looking at, but over the last century, there is simply no debate that there has been a very strong, very real, very aggressive agenda of exclusion in Hollywood. And I love Hollywood. I mean, I've based my whole career around Hollywood. It is what it is. And it got to the point that people started taking it out on a couple of years ago on the Oscars. You guys remember the whole campaign of hashtag Oscars so white. I was actually I never agreed with the Oscars so white thing because to me, the problem, and there was a problem, but the problem wasn't that the Oscars aren't nominating non-white people, because the Oscars' job is just to look at what is there, what's presented to them that year, and nominate what they think is the best. That's it. That's their job. The problem was, and has been in Hollywood for over a century, that there's been this agenda of exclusion to keep women, Asians, black people, gay people, to keep people out. Again, it's not as bad today as it was a number of decades ago, but it has been there and has been very real for a long time. And so the Oscars finally decided to say, look, instead of us taking the heat for the fact that there aren't enough of these opportunities being given to people, we're going to create a couple of standards. Now, the response to these rules has been a bunch of people like chickens with their tail feathers on fire, standing on the top of barns, screaming out, "Quotas! Quotas! Oh my God, the sky is falling!" And when you listen to them for more than about 30 seconds, you realize those people have never actually read the rules. They've never actually, because if they did, they would realize that these new sets of criteria, these new rules, these new standards that the Academy has put into place are so laughably easy that in order for your film to not qualify under these new rules, you would literally have to intentionally be trying not to meet you would literally have to be trying to go out of your way to not qualify. That's how easy these rules are. That's how easy it is. Let's take a look for a minute, shall we? Let's take a moment and actually look at what are the rules? What are these standards? Now, hang tight with this, guys, because I want to go into this into some detail because the importance is in the details. The Academy Awards established a thing that says there are 4 standards, and they simply call it Standard A, Standard B, Standard C, and Standard D. There are 4 standards, but for your movie to qualify for the Academy Awards, particularly for Best Picture, you don't have to meet all 4. You don't even have to meet 3. You only got to meet 2 of these standards. And by the way, one of these is an automatic. I won't spoil which one it is, but one of these 4 standards is a 100% automatic one that every movie already has. So you already got 1 out of the 4, right? And all you need is 2. All you need is 2. So understanding 4 standards, A, B, C, and D, you only got to get 2 of them. So what are those standards? Let's start taking a look at them. The main one that everybody is focused on and thinks is the only one, and this is the one why people say, well, 1917 wouldn't have qualified. Actually, 1917 would have qualified, but maybe not by Standard A. Here's the first standard. Standard A, the in front of camera stuff. To satisfy, for you to get a check mark for Standard A, and remember, you don't have to get a check mark for A, you only need 2, but if you want to get the check mark for A, to satisfy the demands of A, you only have to get one of these 3 things. If you get any one of these 3 things, you get a check mark for Standard A. Here are the 3 things. At least one actor from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group must be cast in a significant role. By the definition of significant role, something that would qualify as being interpreted as a supporting actor. That means there's up to 7 or 8 different characters in your movie could be considered significant role. So if you have a movie with 2 leads and like 4 supporting actors, and one of the supporting actors is Asian, guess what? You've got the check mark for Standard A. Congratulations, you're already done. You've already got the check mark for Standard A. Finished, done. You don't even have to worry about number 2 and number 3 down there. You've done number 1, you're done. But okay, let's say you don't meet that standard. Okay, number 2, the story must center on either women, LGBTQ people, or racial or ethnic groups of the disabled. So if your movie is Erin Brockovich, that's focused on a woman, guess what? You've qualified. Okay, let's move on to number 3. At number 3, at least 30% of the cast must be actors from at least 2 of those 4 unrepresented groups. So out of not just significant roles, out of anybody in your cast, 3 out of 10 need to be anybody that's not a white male. That's it. So if you have any one of those 3 things, you get the check mark for Standard A. You don't even need to have Standard A, but if you want to have Standard A, just do any one of those 3 things and check. You've got it. Now, for a movie like 1917, that takes place when it takes place, in the environment that it takes place in, that makes all of these very difficult. It does. And that's why a lot of people think that this is all there is to it. This isn't. You don't even have to meet Standard A. So let's move on to Standard B. Remember, you have to have 2 of these things, either A and B or A and C or C and D, whatever. So let's say maybe you don't get, let's say maybe you don't get Standard A checkbox. Okay, what's Standard B? Standard B is behind the camera. To satisfy the demands of Standard B, only one of these three criteria need to be met. So again, you don't need to do all three of these things to get a Standard B check mark. You only got to do one of them. Just one. Number one, 2 or more department heads. This is probably the easiest. 2 or more department heads, meaning jobs like director, cinematographer, composer. By the way, department heads can also be things like art direction, costume design, all these types of things. There's a number of things that they qualify as department heads. Must be either female, LGBTQ, disabled, or part of an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. Guess what? Most movies, without even thinking about it, will automatically just qualify with that one alone. Most of the time when you see at the Academy Awards, the nominees and whatever for a lot of these things, it's usually women. So that one they probably already got already. But only 2 of your department heads need to be a non-white male. That's it. Most movies, without even thinking about it, are going to automatically qualify anyway. Or number 2, at least 6 other crew members. That's it. 6 crew members. Only 6 other crew members must be from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. That's it. Rob, I have been on sets, so have you, well, bigger ones than I've been on, but I've been on sets where there have been like 70 crew members. Only 6 of them have to be from an underrepresented racial ethnic group. If you've got that, if you've got like 2 Chinese dudes, one Pakistani guy, 2 black dudes, and somebody representing something else. But guess what? Out of 70 crew members, done. Standard B, check mark. That's all you needed. Or you can get number 3. At least 30% of the film's crew must hail from 4 of the underrepresented, continually laid out in these guidelines. That's fine. You can basically pick and choose whichever one of these things fits your movie the most, and automatic check mark. You've got Standard B. So guess what? If out of your crew of 70, if you've got just 6 of them that aren't white males, you've got you've got Standard B already. And if one of your supporting actors is from India, guess what? You've already got A. You're already done. You're already done. Qualifications satisfied. You're done. But okay. Let's say you, for whatever reasons, you didn't get the A check mark. And let's say for whatever reason you didn't get the B check mark. Well, that still leaves you with C and D. And these are the easiest things in the world, and I guarantee you 99% of the movies out there are going to automatically qualify because they already meet these requirements. Here it is. Standard C, distribution and finance. To satisfy the demands of Standard C, only one of these 2 criteria needs to be met. Number 1, the film's distributor or financing company. This is how easy this is. The film's distributor or financing company must have at least 2 interns from an underrepresented group. That's it. That's it. Guess what? Let's say Warner Brothers is distributing your movie. Out of all Warner Brothers, they got to have two interns somewhere that are part of an underrepresented group. Out of the dozens or maybe hundreds of interns that they've got running around these places, they just got to have 2 interns. Guess what? If you do that, you get Standard C. You get a check mark for Standard C. Duh, there you go. I mean, like I said, they aren't even going to have to think about this. This is something that 99.9% of movies that are getting some kind of release are automatically just going to be already anyway. So check mark for that. And if for whatever reason, the companies don't have 2 interns at minimum somewhere, then number 2, the film's production or distribution or financing company, any one of the 3, must offer training or work opportunities to people from these underrepresented groups. If for whatever reason they don't automatically have number 1, which I guarantee they do already, but if for whatever reason they didn't, just guys say we offer a training program for people from underrepresented group. That's all your distributor or production company or financing company has to do. If any of those things happen, check mark, you've got check mark C. And I guarantee you almost every film that comes out has already done this automatically. It's already a done thing. So there's a check mark there. Remember, you only need 2 check marks. Now, remember I said at the beginning that one of these is already an automatic? You would think that standard C is the automatic because it's so easy. But nope, here's your automatic one. Standard D. Some of the senior marketing, publicity, or distribution executives on our film are from an underrepresented group. The reason I'm telling you this one is already an automatic is because in my experience, which is not the same as everybody's experience, but in my experience, just talking from a publicity standpoint, I'm not exaggerating when I say about 90% of the publicity executives I've interacted with through my AMC days, Complex days, on to today, it's not an exaggeration to tell you about 90% of them have been either women or gay. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just telling you that has been my experience. So here's the thing. You need to have, in order to meet these new Oscar criteria that everybody's freaking out about, you only have to have 2. Standard A, Standard B, Standard C, or Standard D. You just got to get a check mark on 2 of those. That's it. And I'm telling you right now, Standard C is practically an automatic already, and Standard D is an automatic already. Just by having those 2, you can have a movie called Whitey McWhite in the World of Whites and have an all-white cast, and you will still probably qualify under the Oscar rules. And that's not hyperbole. That's not hyperbole in the least. You are still going to qualify under the Oscar rules. To be honest with you, the thing that I'm shocked at is I'm shocked there hasn't been controversy about people saying these rules don't go far enough. I'm not saying that I think they don't go far enough. I'm just saying I'm surprised there's not controversy that they're not saying these things don't go far enough. Again, basically, it comes down to this. These standards are so laughably easy. I can make an argument that you as a movie or as a production company would have to intentionally be saying, I don't like women and I don't like gays and I don't like blacks and I don't like gay. You would basically have to intentionally try to not qualify for one of these things in the Hollywood of today. And to me, this was just the Oscars. And you know I've had my issues with the Oscars. Best popular picture. What a bunch of idiots. Anyway, to me, this is simply the Oscars saying in a symbolic way, look, Hollywood, we need you guys to at least to adhere to some sort of standards if you want us to recognize you. These are the easiest things in the world. So to all the people running around yelling, quotas, this has nothing to do with quotas. Saying, oh, this great movie and this great movie wouldn't have qualified. Yeah, it would have if it was one of the last 15 years. This is a very easy, laughably easy, symbolic gesture by the Academy Awards in an era that kind of needs it, in an industry that for over a century has had a strong, aggressive agenda of exclusion. So I don't get it. So Rob, I look at this, and when I really sat down and started reading through the rules, and I realized, I mean, goddamn, you don't even have to try to meet the eligibility requirements here. Your movie's just going to be eligible almost automatically, even if you don't think about it. I just don't see the uproar about this. I don't see why there are people who got upset at this unless they haven't read the rules. Because I'll tell you what, Rob, one of the things I will say here is this. If the only standard, and this is the one that everybody's been focused on, if this standard A was the only thing and the Oscars were just, nope, you've got to have, X minority and X minority and X minority in your film at all times. If that was the case, I would kind of get why some people would be getting their back up. It's like, wait a minute, this might be going a little bit too far. But the reality is, as we've just laid out, you don't even have to have standard A. You don't have to meet any of these criteria. Your movie doesn't have to meet any of those criteria at all. If you don't want to, there's still plenty of other ways to get enough check marks that you need to meet it. Anyway, Rob, you've read through the rules. You see what's going on here. What's your take on this whole thing?
Well, okay. So, like you, I think it's fairly easy to adhere to these rules, and I think that the idea of I'm all about bringing the more voices, the more diversity we can have in our arts and our businesses. I think it strengthens the tapestry of our culture and our society with the more people participating. So I think the idea behind it is sound. Some of the things about this, though, that I don't like is that the Academy, like, for instance, the part about publicists and marketing people, what does that have to do with winning awards? And the Oscars are sort of, by mandating these kinds of things, I think they're overreaching the oversight that they're expecting. While it might not affect movies and everything, I think that it's the Oscars saying, yeah, we want to have some kind of oversight on the marketing and publicity of your movie. And who's then, do I as a producer, do I then have to hire somebody to make sure, because, everybody who makes a movie thinks they're going to win Best Picture, or they dream of it. Do we now have to hire a person that's going to be in charge of just overseeing the Academy rules? And I think that there's a lot of, the amount of oversight and the direction that they're going seems odd and a bit overreaching to me. And I don't know if it benefits what they're trying to do, because the Academy, what you want is more people, marginalized people, more minorities, people of color, to make films, to work on films, to be in Hollywood, to give us new voices and new stories and things that we haven't seen or heard before, sharing the experience of what it's like to be a person growing up who's different or whatever. I mean, that's what we really want. And I'm like, this seems odd. Like, I would think that the Academy would do more to promote the employment of people, as opposed to, like, they should start a program for people to get them to work on movies, like the DGA programs and things like that. And that's all. I mean, I just think I'm all for diversity and getting more people out there and in front of and behind the cameras. But this seems just a little weird to me. The whole thing seemed a little weird. And I don't care about, I think we need things like this that make it easier for people to get involved and hired and heard. We do need more of that in our society. And like you pointed out, Hollywood has been very exclusionary over a long period of its history. And we only get better movies. I mean, how do you think we got movies like Moonlight and 12 Years a Slave? I think 25 years ago, those movies wouldn't have been made, much less won Best Picture. And I think we're better for it. But these rules are, I think the idea behind them and where they go is a little odd. But the idea behind them is good.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I think, look,
it's like for Best Picture, what is why would you put as one of the criteria the marketing and publicity people? What does that have to do with giving the Best Picture award to a movie? Because what does that have to do? Those people didn't work on the film. They were given the movie later. So why is that even one of the criteria? Like, how do filmmakers control whose work? We don't have control over the marketing of the movie. And if filmmakers can't control these things, then why are they a part of the consideration of the movies being made? That's all. That's the only thing that I think is odd.
And I think the answer to that is the Oscars basically saying, look, we are as much of Hollywood as the studios are, because we are producers and founders and writers and directors and actors and cinematographers. We are Hollywood too. And what we're saying is we want Hollywood to be this. We want Hollywood to start putting some safeguards in place against that agenda that has been a part of our industry for over a century. And quite honestly, Rob, I think a part of the reason why like Publicity and stuff like that was put in was to give the filmmakers a very easy win. I think they're part of the reason why they made that a part of it was to give them a gimme. Like, here's a gimme. This one's automatic. Because like like I said, 90% of the publicists I've worked with are women or gay. And it's like, here's a gimme for you. And it's just Hollywood saying that we understand that in this industry, because we saw with the Oscars So White thing, it was the final product that comes out is a byproduct of a whole systemic system that's in place that goes all the way from who writes the movies, who then promotes the movies, who are executives and powers over different and have power over different aspects of the life of a movie. And it's this. And again, what I think is really interesting, and what I think is part of the genius of what these rules are, is saying, hey, if none of your marketing and publicity people, although it's impossible, but if none of your marketing and publicity people meet these criteria, no big deal. You don't have to have criteria D. Just meet one of the other, just get two of the other three. You know, I think they've just made it so lax and so easy. That's why to me, it's more of the Oscars saying symbolically, hey, we need to start doing things because we've done a terrible job policing ourselves over the past century. We've done a terrible job of it. Therefore, we feel like we need to put some safeguards in place for ourselves, just symbolically to say, hey, we need to at least have a part of our thinking about who are we giving opportunities to? Just a tiny, tiny, tiny part. And like I said, Rob, to me, when I look at it, when you look at the way these criteria are broken down, I literally think you would have to intentionally want to not meet the criteria in order for your movie to make it. And like I look at, like when I look at your film, Tango Shalom, your film qualifies. When I look at my little documentary, I didn't even think about these rules. My movie qualifies.
Right.
There might be a little quality issue that might hinder me from getting an Academy Award, but you know, and I think that's the thing. And my objection here is that a lot of the people I'm hearing objecting, not you, but a lot of the other people I'm hearing objecting are asking as if this is some burden heavy thing filled with all these quotas and all this stuff that's going to be a real burden on filmmakers. And nothing could be further from the truth when you actually break down and look at them.
Well,
but
one of the things that struck me first, because when I first reading this, it was bizarre to me thinking like, okay, if a movie's made in South Korea, like Parasite, having been to South Korea, it's a pretty homogenous culture. You know, I don't know if more so than say the United States is actually we're a melting pot, you know, but there are countries in the world that are not nearly as much of a melting pot as the United States. And it just struck me as sort of strange. Like, are you going to keep those same criteria to countries that have a more predominant say ethnic group that from a percentage standpoint? Like it was just odd. The whole thing to me was an odd way to do it. What I would like to see is I want to see more movies getting made by different kinds of people. And I think that does this help that? Are we going to get more Black filmmakers or Asian American filmmakers or Latino filmmakers or Native American, Indigenous people? Are we going to get more women filmmakers? That's what we need to concentrate on. How do we get more diverse filmmakers and get their voices out there into the world? And I'm all for that. And I just wonder, maybe rather than make these, and by the way, these are only for the Best Picture.
Yes.
You know, they're not for all the other movies. And I'm like, just Best Picture? Like,
so it's even more limited. It makes it even easier. It's even more limited. And by the way, I forgot to mention the other brilliant thing about these rules is that they say they are going to have an appeal process. Basically what that is let's say for whatever reason, you could only get one of those check marks, right? Let's say you were shooting in, I don't know, what Greenland. I don't know what the ethnic populations and percentages are in Greenland. But for argument's sake, let's say you're shooting your thing in Greenland. And you wanted to be very authentic. You wanted to employ all local people and all that kind of stuff. And for whatever reason, you could only meet one of the criteria. One of the things that's going to be a part of this Oscar things is a special appeals process that's going to allow you to come before a committee of the Academy and say, look, we had extenuating circumstances that prevented us from being able to meet those criteria. And the Academy is going to have the flexibility to say, that makes perfect sense. We're going to grant an exemption on that one. So they're building in a safeguard for themselves as well. And by the way, Rob, I agree with you 100% that what we need to see is more people getting involved in filmmaking. But I had a woman that I worked with for some time that is one of the rare Black female film journalists that I've ever met. And I remember talking to her, and it's like, she didn't get involved until late because she never thought she could, because she would look at all the film journalists and there were no black female film journalists. And I think when you get little things like this, where the Academy is saying to movies, hey guys, come on, just make sure in your executive positions you have somebody here. Make sure you're offering some training programs. Make sure you're giving some opportunities to people so that future filmmakers, future people who want to work in the film industry can look and actually see that there are positions there. There are opportunities there for me. I remember when George Larocque, the great former Edmonton Oiler hockey player, he said, yeah, man, I'd never forget this interview with him. It's like one of the reasons he didn't get involved, like he never thought he could actually make the NHL, because he said, ain't no brothers play hockey. But I mean, he persevered and he got there and he became a gateway for a lot of things. So I don't know.
Well, I think that's a really good example. There are people that just traditionally just never thought that they could pursue those jobs, and it's true for, not just in the movie business, but across the board, getting women into STEM, and now you have all these trailblazers and people. That's how industries get changed, is people never even consider, like, I never thought of that, and that's what we have to change. We have to change the thinking that people know that there are opportunities here. And you can come in, and we have to make a society where people can dream from the time they're little kids. If they want to do something, they know that their socioeconomic status or their race or their religion or their gender or their sexuality, whatever, will not prevent them from getting into their professions of choice.
Yes.
And to know that there are people out there that will offer them a helping hand. And I think that's what you do. The studios too. The studios step up and they have internship programs, and they're doing that. And there are more and more people. I mean, I'm pretty optimistic, like you said, about, like, in marketing. There's a lot of, having worked in the industry for a long time, there is more and more diversity all the time, and I think it's great. I think it's exactly what needs to happen, and across the board. By the way, how did he do when he was started playing hockey?
George Larocque?
Yeah.
He was mostly, oh my God, he was a sight. People would always get excited when George would get on the rink because somebody was going to get beat down. Like, George Larocque was this big, strong, intimidating. He could throw his body around, and he had, for a big guy, he had remarkable puck skills. He wasn't going to lead the team in goals or lead the team in assists, but he was remarkable puck skills, very skilled skater, and, like, just one of the big tough guys. And everybody loved George Larocque. Everybody thought he was great. But I think, what I think, Rob, here at the end of the day, I think 10 years from now, I think, like, these criteria, these rules will have been in place, and 10 years from now, no one will have even discussed it or brought it up for 5 years.
Right.
Because it's just it's just going to just bleed into the background. It's going to be such an automatic thing that just happens naturally that no one's even going to, I don't even think it's going to be an issue. I just don't think it's going to be an issue. But anyway, guys, as we've kind of illustrated here, there's a lot of different moving parts to this and what can happen. And by the way, it doesn't get implemented right away. I think it's 2024. I think so. They're giving themselves and studios and the publicity companies and the finance companies a couple of years to get everything in order. And I just think it's going to be an easy thing. Question is, guys, what do you think about this? Jump into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right.